Welcome everyone to another one of our Tech 90 broadcast. Daniel and I are starting us off live this time. So we are hosts, myself, Greg Brunts, and Daniel Hambrick. We're both here today to be able to answer your questions.
Good
Um,
morning, everybody.
but I thought we, started off live for a minute and just kind of talk to you about, what we're doing here with Tech 90s. So um, for the ones that have never joined before, these are previously recorded footage that we did down in Atlanta with uh, different test procedures and stuff we've done. And then what we do is we kind of edit them up a little bit. We can't edit them perfect because we didn't really plan them specifically for Tech 90. We just kind of roll with footage we already have. But we feel it's good material. We want to share it again. That way, people that haven't got a chance to see it do get to see it, and maybe you just need to see it again. And then we'll move right into questions too. So, Daniel, I'm gonna throw it at you for a second. You can kind of give them a rundown of what we're going to be talking about today in the videos.
Yeah, cool, Greg. So today we'll be covering indoor unit disassembly. Um, First, we'll cover why we think understanding the proper way to assemble an indoor unit is important. And I really think you're gonna really enjoy the recordings that we did. We had a lot of fun with this, and this is the first time that we actually we had talked about this last year, Greg,
Yep.
and this was the first time we're like, hey. When have you taken apart an indoor unit? When have you gotten that opportunity? And so actually going through it ourselves so that we also understand, the guys out there in the field that are having to take these apart, and that's why we didn't script it, we didn't, do it ahead of time. We just jumped into it, and that way we can really experience what's going on. Um, so first we'll cover understanding proper way to disassemble an indoor unit. Run a training video on disassembling a Levo 9K wall mount, and followed by a quick explanation, just a tech tip on the 4-point temperature check. And then we'll come back for a live Q&A session with Greg and me to answer any questions. So don't forget, make sure to use the Q&A button. Put your questions in, even while the show's going or now is fine. We love the interaction and answering questions with everyone. So
Daniel, just so I can clarify with everybody, so we're going to break this down in the middle. So, or really not in the middle, but we're going to do the live, the video of the Levo 9K
yeah.
disassembly. Then we're going to come back while you guys get your questions and stuff in. After that, then we will come back live and answer your questions. And then when we're done with that question answer session, then we're going to go into the disassembly of a cassette
Correct.
and the disassembly of a ducted unit. And then once we're done with those two in that video, then we're going to come back and do live Q&A with you again after that.
So plenty of
So
opportunities to get your questions in there, and we'll answer them. So we want to be able to maintenance them, and we also want to be able to troubleshoot them and replace parts if needed on down the road. So it's really important to understand how to take that apart, even for testing. Sometimes testing, you need to take the cover off just to get to the pipes, and we'll show you that in the 4-point temp check. So if we can't take it apart properly without breaking everything on it,
Well,
then
and that's especially true with the high wall units because they're all plastic, and if you get too
right,
forceful, you're gonna break something, and then trying to get the component to replace it's not fun. But also, I want to comment on the cassette teardown. I personally had never tore down a cassette before, and I wasn't the one that did it. It was you and JD in the video, but my God, you guys make it look so easy, and it just makes it less scary. Okay, I got to take this thing apart. Well, it's really not as bad as it looks.
yeah, yeah,
So, and the same with the ducted unit. The ducted unit comes apart a lot easier than it really looks. So,
yep.
knowing where to go for the screws and stuff with the video and knowing where the hidden screws are, that helps a lot too. If you kind of just like, oh, that's right, I seen that video. Don't forget about this hidden screw and that hidden screw and getting the condensate pump assemblies out and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of good, useful information here of just how to go about tearing one of these units down.
Well, it's the same thing as when I'm, trying to be a shade tree mechanic, working on my truck. Before I take anything apart, I'll usually get on YouTube and see if somebody's done it. And most of the time, it saves hours. There could be one bolt that you just don't
Right.
see, and they'll tell you. So that's really
The only
valuable.
difference between Daniel and myself in that situation is he's doing it on his phone. I'm doing it on a TV in my garage.
Yeah, I like that TV in the garage.
But yeah, I'm searching YouTube too because I don't work on my truck every day. I need some answers. So I think, and then what we will do is just so everybody knows too. Once this broadcast is done, we are going to break down each one of those separately. So it'll be a separate tech tip put on YouTube for indoor unit disassembly of
And
a
the model.
wall mount, of a cassette, and of ducted. So you'll have that way you don't have to watch the whole thing if you're only dealing with the ducted or if you're only dealing with a cassette. You'll have reference videos to refer back to as well.
Awesome.
All right. With that, I think we'd
let's roll it.
Let's roll it, and we'll come back after we do the indoor wall mount teardown. So, and there's one last thing before we roll it. So the reason why we do the 4-point temperature check quick tip video along with this is because it was kind of involved in that whole scenario of what we're doing, and I don't think it's a bad idea to repeat that too. So we're going to do the wall mount and the 4-point temp check, and then we'll come back and do live Q&A. So please jump in there and ask your questions.
All right, so we have a 4th generation Levo indoor wall mount. I believe this is a 9K wall mount here that we're going to show you how to take it apart and take the blower wheel out and everything. So first of all, we want to before we get started tearing it down, I'd like to point out a couple of things. I know we talked about this if you were able to join us on installation, but just to go over it a little bit again, this is going to be invaluable for your service guys when they go out to, or your maintenance guys when they go out to maintenance it. On the backside of this particular model is a little different. The previous models had a clamp here.
Toward the camera more.
Yeah, thank you. So they had a clamp here that holds the line set back against this. Not only will it make it a little bit easier for installation, but it will make it a little bit easier for service as well. So we just take this clip out and throw it away. We don't want it back on there because that's going to give us a little bit of freedom for that line set to move and the coil to move when we go to service the system. So also, I'd like to point out, and we have this installation cut off here just for the purpose of showing you. This bend right here, it's got a spring on the 3/8 pipe. The 1/4 inch is usually a little bit easier to deal with, but during installation, we want to make sure that we're being careful with that and not kinking it. We do run into a lot of calls, and we find out that this is the area where the problem is. So we'll talk about the 4-point temperature check later, but the reason that we ask for that, and we ask that you take the cover off, and we'll show you where to test it when we take this apart, is that if you're testing your temperature here and you're missing this, then you're not getting the whole picture. So real quickly, the condensate drain line, just to show you how to take this off of there and move it, there is just a tab with a clip on it, and you simply move the clip backwards off of the tab, twist it, and the easiest way to do that is to use a screwdriver and just push it back off of the little nipple that holds it there. I mean, twist this a little bit and pull it off. So if we need to move it to this side, pretty easy to do. We asked the factory a while back. It did come standard this way. We asked them to move it here so that it went with the general common installation, which is straight out the wall. So if you are going to move this, don't forget to take the plug from the other side, put it back in here so that you're not leaking condensate. And
just for demonstration, let's just leave that off.
Yeah, we can leave it.
We'll come back to that.
All right.
We can put that back together later.
During installation, make sure that this is completely wrapped back up and sealed all the way. Don't just put a zip tie around it. Otherwise, you'll have some condensation around the pipes. And if you've ever been to an installation where you see green streaks running down the wall, that's where it's coming from. It's a little bit of air getting to the pipes and leaking. So let's move these back. All right. Now, let's get into taking this thing apart. So the air filter on this particular model is located on the top. If you happen to go to install one of these and you open the front cover and you don't see the filters in there where they used to be, it may be on the top, so just check that before you decide that they're missing. All right. So we'll go ahead and remove the front cover. And we have to remove the display before we remove the front cover so that we can get it completely out of the way. On this one, there's one screw. Some of them have two screws. This is a different size screw, so you want to make sure that you keep up with it and don't mix it up with the other screws that we take out.
Yeah, because if you use the wrong screw, you'll run it right through the face of the
cover.
Of the cover.
Good point, Greg. All right. So, depending on the model, you're either going to push in or out on these tabs. So on this one, we're going to push out, and it should come out pretty easily. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and take the electrical cover off, get it out of the way, and I'll use this as my tray to put my screws in. Makes a handy little tray. Depending on the model, this particular one has 3 screws across the front here. Some of them will have more than 3. And then there is another one that if you forget about it, you'll get really irritated trying to take this thing apart. So to get to that next screw, we want to gently move the louver open, take out the bushing in the center, and we want to make sure we don't lose that, and then gently pry out a little bit, just enough to get this out of the slot there, and then slide it off of the stepper motor. Now that additional screw you'll see in the center here, there's a beauty shield, and there's a screw underneath it. If we forget about that one, the front cover will not budge. right. Now this is the Levo 4th gen. The first time that we saw this was on the 3 VIR models. It is easy service access to the control board, so we don't have to take this all apart if we just need to get to the control board.
I'm gonna tip it forward.
Yep.
So they can see it better.
So to get to the control board, basically we take that electrical cover off. If you have it installed, you're going to have to get your wires removed and out of the way, pulled out, and then just clip this here. There's a little clip right there, and then it moves out of the way. Then you can take the control board, pull it completely out, and get to anything that you need to test for the sensors, unplug it, replace it, and of course, this particular one, it doesn't have a jumper cab, doesn't look like. Or am I just missing it?
I think you're just missing it.
Okay. Yeah, it does have a jumper cap right there.
Yep.
It's got a 7 on top of it. So we'll show that in a minute if we get a chance to. So, if you want to put it all the way over, on removing the rest of the shell, all we do is pull up right close to where these little tabs are, and it'll pop loose. Want to be careful with it because we don't want to break it. And then there's another tab right here, and if it's on the wall, it's a little bit difficult because you don't have a way to pry up here at the top. So I like to use a long shank screwdriver, just a flat blade. You don't want to use a lot of pressure, but you just need to get it up in there enough to just push a little bit up there like that where it pops out. And then now the entire cover come right off of there.
You got the unit, I'll take the cover.
Got it. Perfect. All right. So let's say, for instance, we're going to access the blower wheel or the blower motor. We want to get that moved out of there. So assuming this is installed on the wall, we've got the coil that's in the way of that. To make that a little bit easier to access on this end to the blower motor, we're going to take this electric box and completely move it out of the way. So we have a sensor here. That's our coil temperature sensor, the 20K sensor that Greg was talking about earlier. Just move it from the well. And then we need to remove the ground wire.
I can hold it
There. Thank you. I'm going to take this screw because it's a machine thread, a little bit different screw than the rest of them. Put it back where it was so I don't lose it. And then there's a screw here on top of the electric box holding it in. Remove that screw. And then that box comes completely away. Now, you can leave it there, but I want to get it completely out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the control board box out. And get this out of the way. It's a good idea to take a picture of how the wires are routed, which we didn't do.
Which we didn't do. You're right. Practice what we preach, not what we do.
So on the control board, we've already removed the retainer clip off of this, so we can easily unplug the blower motor. And I'm going to go ahead and take the stepper motor and remove it just to get it out of the way.
lot of this is actually easier if it's actually mounted on the wall, because then you're not trying to support the unit and unscrew everything. So it's a little bit different trying to do it on a bench showing, but
I guess it's just personal opinion about which way is easier. You know, it depends if you're, depending on what you're having to service. It may be easier to undo the flares and put it on a bench.
Right.
Just depends. So I'd like to show on the control board, because we talked about it earlier. Put that right there where Nick can see it with the camera. So here's the jumper cap right here, and it's got a number 7 on it. So, all right. So now, to remove the blower, we've got 2 screws in this one. The other models holding this assembly in here, there's sometimes 2 here and 1 back in here that you have to get to. You may need a little bit longer screwdriver to get to it, but this one only has 2 near the front. Now I'm probably going to lose this screw down in the drain pan, so I need to remember that when I go to put this back together, where that screw went to. There it is. And because we don't have the drain line installed, so keep that in mind. If you've got the drain line installed and this falls down in there, then you could have the screw stuck in your drain line.
Yep.
And you have to take the drain line apart to get to it. So put those right there. All right. So with the line set, you'll see that when we go to lift this up, we needed that extra movement. That clip being on there would not allow this to move at all. So with that clip off of there, we've got a way to move this up and down a little bit, which is exactly what we need to get to that blower wheel. Got 2 screws on this end. And as Greg and I were talking yesterday, there's a reason why we're not using power tools when we're doing this. We don't want to strip things out.
nope.
There's no need to use a impact wrench or anything. All right. So this one has a little bit of a plastic clip right here on the back. So as we lift this up, that clip is going to come loose out of the rear cover, which it just did. So now we've got the ability to pull this up. So you see the movement that we need from the line set. We need it to give in order to get this up like this. So as I pull this up, then I can take the fan motor and lift it up and out. Now the other end, the blower wheel is just slid into that bearing over there. So if you can lift that up a little bit there, then we can lift this up and just pull outwards, and then that whole assembly will come out of there. It's getting hung on this right here. We want to be careful when we're doing this because...
And then you can actually, at that point, it might be easier to go ahead and just unscrew the motor to where you're only dealing with the blower wheel.
Yes. And there, it's all out. So when we were doing it, when we were doing it in another class, we actually unscrewed the shaft of the motor, removed the motor, and then pulled the blower wheel out, which was a little bit easier than that. So you want to take that apart as well?
Can, yeah.
Yeah. So on the blower wheel, you'll see there is an area where there is a missing fin on this, and right in there is the set screw. Just loosen it, and it comes right out of there.
And the motor pops right off.
There you go. Now you can take that outside and clean it. Now let's go ahead and remove this completely.
Yep, hang on one second. Let me set this down.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Got it?
Got it. And I'd like to show removing this. So this is the bearing that holds the other end of the blower wheel. In order to remove it, you simply pop it out. Now this is a two-piece part. This is called the bearing O gasket. It is basically a gasket with a bearing inside of it, rubber around it, and then this is the holder. So if you're looking, if you need one of these, if you have a failed one, you look it up in the parts manual, they're going to be listed separately. This is called the bearing O gasket.
And you can actually have, we've had a few here and there where that O gasket's not seated in there properly, and it causes this thing to bounce a little bit, which gives you blower noise. So sometimes your noise from the blower running could be just because this is not seated into there properly, and it's just a matter of, and you don't even have to take the whole thing out because you got enough movement in there. You can pop that and pull that bearing out and only be accessing this one end of the unit.
Yeah. Yep.
And just tipping that evaporator up just enough to pop that bearing cup out of there.
Yeah, removing that by itself, if you just needed to replace that, is fairly simple if you lift that coil up.
Yep.
So, all right. So there you go. There's your indoor unit teardown. Hi, Daniel with GREE here at the training lab in Atlanta. We have a single zone system here that I want to show you the 4-point temperature check on. You see that I have the wall cover off of the indoor unit. The reason that we need the wall cover off is so that we can access the refrigerant lines before they go into the manifold of the evaporator coil. To do this 4-point temperature check, it's not going to be a complete test if we test near the flares or on the outdoor unit side of the flares. So as you can see, I have the temperature clamp already on the suction line of the indoor unit, and I have the temperature clamp on the suction line of the outdoor unit. It's running in cool mode right now, and it's less than 4 degrees difference between the indoor and the outdoor readings. Anything more than 4 degrees is a problem. There's probably a restriction or a kink or bend, too much of a bend in the pipe. Remember, we want to use tubing bender when we're installing our line sets. We know that the suction line is good. It doesn't have any restrictions. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the liquid line with my clamp on the outside unit as close as I can get to the outdoor. And also on the indoor unit, I'm going to move that clamp to the liquid line as well so we can get our reading there. So for this particular system, we know that the line set does not have any restrictions in it. We don't have to take the time taking the line set cover off. We don't have to remove the insulation to physically inspect it. Always remember that when we're troubleshooting a refrigerant circuit, always track your temperatures of your refrigerant. Don't forget that with any GREE mini split product, the line set is an extension of the indoor coil. So in the cooling mode, it acts as the evaporator, and in the heating mode, it's acting as the condenser. The reason that we refer to it as suction liquid is that's just what we're used to, but it's actually a gas line and a flash liquid line, basically. So that's how you do the 4-point temperature check. With GREE, we're by your side.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video there of the teardown of the wall mount and the the quick tip about doing the 4-point temperature check. So just right off the bat, I want to say, keep in mind, guys, we're doing that on a bench. It's not on a wall, so it's not really the same as you guys do on the field. The main purpose behind the video was just to effectively see how it all comes apart. So, just for disassembly purposes. So anyway, with that, let's jump right into it. Daniel, if you want to throw some questions at me, we'll jump into it.
Yeah, Greg. So we've got a few questions in here. Appreciate everybody putting their questions in. Let's see. Chris says he cannot stay the whole time. Is there a way to view it later? Yes, most certainly. We'll have this posted on YouTube later. And then another question.
Let me comment on that real quick too. So as we said in the beginning of the video, they'll be separated though. So we're going to do just the wall mount tear down, and it'll be just the cassette tear down, and it'll be just the ducted tear down. There'll be individual tech tips for them.
Gotcha. And we normally post the entire recording of the Tech 90, Greg, like we did last time with the Q&A and everything. So we could do that also. I'm not sure. But definitely having them, cut up to where they can just click on, hey, I want to see the disassembly of the cassette. So is going to be great.
Maybe I spoke out of turn. So if we can, we'll do them separately so that it's an easier reference for you. But worst case scenario, we'll put the whole Tech 90 up.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, if it is the whole Tech 90, we can actually have in YouTube, it has the click here and it goes to that time frame that you want to see, give you some options.
Maybe that'd be better. We'll just do it like that.
Yeah. So I know our video producers, he'll figure all that good stuff out that we don't understand how to do, right, Greg?
That's right. Don't want to understand it either.
So we have another question in here. James is saying, can you talk about the RoughIn boxes?
I think we should. And I believe we got an image here we pulled up to share with you guys. So this is a great image of the RoughIn box. Just to be clear, guys, we don't sell these. You'll have to get them from your independent suppliers, but I think it's a great way to go about doing installations, especially in new construction. It's not going to be very beneficial to you in replacement work, but in new construction type jobs, this is a great way to be able to do your rough-in, get your drains plumbed, condensate pump. As you can see in this picture here, that shows that condensate pump up inside that box so that you would be able to, pump out. These things also have, if you're just going to do a gravity drain, it allows you to go ahead and pre-plumb your drain, and you can run that in 3/4 inch PVC. And then when you hang the wall mount, your drain line will just mount inside the RoughIn box, and you hook up your refrigerant lines. But this gives you the ability to get all your refrigerant lines in place, electric in place, and be able to cover it back up, let the drywallers do their thing. And then when you're ready to come back and hang the wall mounts, all you got to do is open that box up and everything you need to hang the wall mounts right there. Some things to keep in mind, depending on whether you got a 2x6 exterior wall or interior wall, or a 2x4 interior wall, what's going to be nailed or screwed to both sides of that wall once you leave. If it's going to be a 2x4 wall, you may very well want to, do a sheet metal wrap or something around them refrigerant lines just to keep a drywall screw from being ran into your refrigerant lines. Or maybe you got a better idea, maybe you're cutting a piece of PVC pipe in half and wrapping it with that. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you could, be preemptive and make sure the refrigerant lines aren't going to get penetrated by a screw or a nail or something like that. So 2x6 exterior walls, you can get, or even an interior wall, you get away with a little bit more, because if you're centering them lines on the stud coming down, less likely to get hit. So And the other thing I would say is, try to use standoffs so the refrigerant lines are, not anchored to the stud. They're stood off of the stud. And then by all means, make sure when you're all done that the end user understands that they can't go nail a picture right up over the top of that wall mount or below that wall mount and run their nail for their picture right into your refrigerant line. But I do think the RoughIn boxes, it gives us the ability to put refrigerant lines in the wall, because not everybody wants them refrigerant lines going through the exterior wall and then using hide line on the outside of the building. If you're doing multiple indoor units, then that doesn't look as well as being able to hide the refrigerant lines in the wall.
Yeah, yeah, most certainly. Well, cool. Yeah, I think that RoughIn box is really cool. I mean, that's from where you used them on your house. That was a great idea.
Well,
So-
and I actually, was living in Missouri when my house was being built 7 hours away in Tennessee, and I didn't actually install it. It was another HVAC contractor to put the equipment in for me because that was a 7-hour trip for me. But I supplied RoughIn boxes, and that particular contractor
them,
told
yeah.
me, he goes, we had no idea. We'd never used them before, but we are going to be using them in new construction
Yeah.
from here on out. So they liked them that much. So if you guys haven't ever tried them, I'd give them a shot. See what you think.
All right. So we have not really a question, but a couple of comments from Carlos. He says, I think if you guys bend the copper on the indoor unit like you did, you could kink copper on the entrance of evap coil. And then he says you need to bend the copper down 90 degrees on the evap coil, then bend it up 90 degrees to make perpendicular to the wall hole to avoid kink on your copper coil. Completely agree with you, Carlos. The most important thing there is don't kink the lines,
And that's what we were trying to show in the video there is
It's
that
how easy it is to kink that right there.
Even with the spring over it doesn't mean you can't kink that line. You can.
Right.
So you need to be very gentle, and that's what Daniel was showing. You just slowly bend that line so that you're not kinking it. And if you have to, cut that insulation back, make sure it's not kinked. And then you can wrap it. And then I've talked about that in other videos. I talked about an installation video. When you tape that insulation back up, don't tape it real tight to the refrigerant line. You press that insulation real tight against that refrigerant line, it's going to cause the insulation to sweat.
Yep.
It needs to have somewhat of an air pocket in between the pipe and the insulation to keep the insulation itself from sweating.
Right.
So don't pull the tape real tight.
All right. Another question is, will a 230-volt mini split cassette run on 120 volts?
It absolutely will. The same with our GMV products or our multi-pro units. They will run on 120 volts too. They don't run properly. The fan doesn't run at the right speed, for one. And
the
then
condensate pump doesn't work.
The condensate pump will not work because this is a 230 volt pump. So it'll run for a little while in cooling until the fan fills up with water.
And I believe we're going to answer that pretty good in the next video as well. But that it'll run long enough to fool you to think that everything's good and you can leave the job.
Now, if it was a 120 volt cassette, then you don't have to worry about it. But if it's a 230 volt cassette, you have to have.
Well, yeah, but we don't make 120 volt cassettes. So if you find one,
if.
So, all right. So let's see. Youssef says, can we access this video in the future on YouTube? Yeah, I think we covered that pretty good. Thanks for putting the question in there. And then Chuck says, be mindful of heads installed close to right side inside corners. Very good point. Because if you're putting it too close to the wall and you ever need to service that blower wheel, then it could be an issue trying to get that thing out of there.
And I believe I've seen another comment, and I briefly read it, but the comment was made, it'd be a lot easier to pull the blower wheel out the left-hand side of the wall mount. And that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just, like I said, again, we were just showing you guys how it all comes apart. But yeah, if you were going to pull that blower wheel out, especially just to clean it,
With it on the wall, then
leave the
yeah, you'd
motor
wanna pull it
mounted
on the left-hand
and-
side.
and pull the wheel out the left-hand side. Absolutely.
Correct.
If you have the clearance.
Right.
You know, it depends on where that wall mount's mounted. You know, if you have less space between the wall to the left than the blower wheel is, you may not be able to get it out the left.
Yeah. You may be taking the unit off the wall altogether.
Yep.
So, and Chris says, what's the best way to attach the drain to the unit's tubing? PVC doesn't fit. Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, the drain line will not fit inside a piece of 3/4 PVC. However, if you're wanting to use PVC, all you have to do is get a coupling and put on that PVC. Then the drain, along with the installation on that, will also fit inside that coupling rather nicely, actually snug. And then you can secure it with tape to keep it down in there. What do you think, Greg?
Well, there's another way you can do it too, and I've done it many times. Is you get a barb fitting adapter, and the drain line will
Yes.
push over the barb fitting. And then if
Yes.
you just want to be err on the side of caution, I've done it both ways. I've used a hose clamp, just making sure I'm not over tight in the hose clamp, that I actually split the
Just to
tubing,
secure it. Yeah.
or even just a zip tie. If you put a zip tie around that, pull that zip tie nice and tight, that'll keep that drain line attached and it won't leak.
Yep.
So a couple different ways you can do it out there. I've actually ran drain lines before where you go out the wall and I'm tying into like a drain where it goes into a gutter. And I believe I even showed that in the installation video we just ran the flexible drain line all the way out there and then just tapped it to a barb fitting to PVC and then ran it over in, so it ran into the gutter drain, because the gutter drain goes into the ground field drain, which drains that water way away from the house. So that's something else you want to be mindful of, is make sure you're not dumping a bunch of water, you know, where the end user may not want all that water to be in the summertime.
Right.
So
Good point.
Make sure they're aware of where you're, terminating your condensate, put it that way.
All right. So Sam says, can we use Python line set? How about using ProFit fittings? We used them until they modified the design, but they had an issue leaking with the new design. Our stance on that, we've talked about this many times, Greg, is, you can use whatever you want. Like if it works for you, great. We're not against or for any particular brand or type of line set or anything, as long as it's the right size and stays within the min maxes. And then any other connections you want to use, that's completely up to you. It's not really, GREE doesn't make those things. So,
well, and the good part about it is, as we've talked about before, GREE's equipment does a great job of protecting itself. So
it does.
If the fittings you choose to use leak, it's probably not going to damage the unit, and you're going to be the one back fixing it. So, and it's not a part of the equipment. And I'm not trying to say this to be, rude or ignorant or anything like that. The equipment's warranted, but how you do the line set is on you. So I would just make sure that you guys are picking fittings that are appropriate and are not going to affect flow, and they're the right size, and that they're going to be leak free, so that you guys can minimize any kind of callbacks or problems you're having with the equipment that you install.
Right. And I've had contractors swear by the quick connect fittings, and they add it into every job. It just makes each job quicker, and that way they're getting the job done quicker and moving on to the next one. And then other people tell me, hey, I hate those things. A lot of it could come down to preference. So,
Right.
All right. So Craig says, what about multiple heads installed in a house and one remote is changing them all at the same time? What do you think, Greg?
Well, they're infrared remotes. So if that signal can be picked up by more than one head, it's going to change the temperature on more than one head. That's the only
That's
thing
right.
you can do at that point would be to go to a wired controller and use wired controllers to adjust the temperature on each one.
Or the other options, just use the GREE Plus app, Wi-Fi.
Do it
You
that
can
way as
control
well.
it that way. There's some different options. You know, if you got down to it and you just wanted to, you could use a 24-volt adapter.
Well, and if it's a commercial application, let's not forget, we just announced that, you can do the cool automation if you want to
That's
control
right.
multiple indoor units on mini splits with
And
cool
it doesn't have to
automation.
be a commercial application. They may just want the cool automation.
Yep.
So,
Some people
yeah.
got a lot more money than me.
That's right. All right. Well, that's all the questions for now. We appreciate all of the participation and encourage you to continue. Put your questions in as we go along.
So before we go to the next video, I want to throw a question out to the audience. What we would like to know, and you guys can respond while you're watching the video of the cassette teardown and the ducted teardown. But the question of the audience is, how does this time slot for doing Tech 90s work for you guys? Is there a better time of the day that would be more beneficial, earlier in the morning, later in the evening, or later in the afternoon? Just kind of throw in your comments. So, I can't promise you we're going to change it. We just want to try to get an overall feel for how this time slot works for you guys.
And that's the whole point of this whole Tech 90 anyway. It's for all of you. This is how we're trying to help and assist and help you with training and give you a voice, give you a chance to ask questions and make comments. And also, we want to make that work for everyone if possible. So,
and I actually appreciate the questions that come in and stuff. And some of them are just comments that we repeat back, because if it's good information shared by another contractor that could help a different contractor, there's enough work out there for everybody. We don't have to, worry about killing somebody else's business, but sharing knowledge is key in this industry,
So true, Greg.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we'll go ahead and roll with the tear down of the cassette and then the ducted unit, and we'll come back and do some more questions. So don't forget to click on that Ask a Question button and throw them at us.
What JD is going to show us, demonstration, is how to disassemble a cassette, and we'll talk about some troubleshooting on the cassette as we go along. So, you ready to get to it?
Yep. So, of course, this unit right now is upside down, so when it's installed, it'll be the other way around. Mm-hmm. So, you would have to, of course, this would be your drywall line here. Before you would get started, I would be up in the attic. You want to take off the cover here. So go ahead, take off the cover. You can use a drill, or a Phillips screwdriver. If you do use a drill, we recommend not having your torque value set up too high. So you can see I have it set to 4, 4 to 6 in that range. That way we're not stripping out anything. That way it exposes our wires. And in this demonstration, we're going to get this unit all the way down to where we can service the pump, say the float's stuck, or we need to replace the pump, which those pumps really rarely ever go out. I don't think I've ever had one call that I personally took that the pump went out. They are pretty good, but I have had a float, and I even had a contractor that installed it upside down, so that's why.
That would cause it to give. Now, what's the code?
That was actually a ducted unit, to be clear. That was installed upside down, and the float was, of course,
gotcha.
stuck on because the ducted unit was upside down.
So what's the code that we'll get if we have a open water switch on a cassette or a slim duct?
I forgot.
You forgot? And you're supposed to remember all of these.
Right.
I mean, come on. It's an E9 code.
E9, that's right.
And actually, I was looking it up on the air code troubleshooting guide, and it's not in there right now. That what is in there would technically only apply to like a high wall. So we'll update that for you guys. But just know if you get it on a cassette or a slim duct, make sure it's not installed upside down, or that it's draining properly and it does have a drain pan full of water causing it to open. So now on this, and I'll talk when you go ahead and take it apart, JD.
So I'm going to take off this here first.
I wanted to point out, we don't have the grill installed on this one just for ease of taking this apart. So you would have to unplug your grill and unbolt it from these 4 bolts here and take that grill off before you did any of this. But 2 things to point out on the grill, and I know we wanted to talk about our controller a little bit, JD.
Yep.
So one is the A revision cassette, the display, there was no display on the grill. There's simply a receiver, so you can point the remote at it and control it, right? And then on the B revision cassette, the new grill has a 88 display on it, so you can actually see an error code. So a good troubleshooting tool for if you have a cassette and you aren't able to see a display giving you the error on the cassette grill, then plug up a wall controller if you don't have one plugged up, and you'll be able to read the error code off of it.
Yep. All right, so I removed the 4 screws holding this fan guard in. It kind of just flips back. Took these 2 screws out. It kind of clips on down there, so you just lift that out. That exposes the wire. So next, to get everything out, now we need to take the wheel out.
Okay. I'm going to help you with that?
Yep.
All right.
So this just lifts right out of there. There is a little groove, and there is a washer that would be on the bottom. Sometimes it's stuck on there. You just don't want to lose that. And there's a little piece on top that sometimes may come off, so you don't want to lose that either. So put that in a little magnet holder.
And if you don't have one of these,
you want to get one.
They're 99 cents at the store. Get one, get 10 of them.
Right. So,
let's see here.
So to get this out, we have to remove this guard down here.
Okay, so that's just an electrical guard.
Yep,
basically.
That's just holding that wire down,
back.
so of course it doesn't get in your fan wheel there. We got some zip ties on 2 brackets here that we'd have to cut. So I believe it's right in here.
Can you grab them?
Yep, I got them.
Okay.
Thank you. So cut the 2 zip ties. And then next we have 4 screws on your 4 corners that we got to remove. And again, you want to be careful because this is styrofoam. If you manhandle it, you can break it.
And the drain pan's built into that, right?
Correct. This is your drain pan on the other side. When we flip it up here, we'll show you. So next you got to unclip your wires, which there's a zip tie holding your wires in right here.
So you were saying when we were talking about, taking this apart, you were saying that, if you don't have an access to this and you have to go up in the attic, make sure you're doing all of that while you're up there.
Correct. Yes.
So that you can go ahead and
yes, I did forget that. When you take that cover off in the attic, you definitely want to cut these zip ties and unplug all these wires right here, so that way when you're down below, you don't have to make a second trip into the attic.
Go ahead and take everything apart.
Yep.
Okay.
Just cut that zip tie. We're going to unplug these wires here. So there is those little clips on the wires.
Retainer clips.
Little retainer
I
clips.
love those things.
So you can use a little thermostat screwdriver. Those will pop off there. Even some needle nose will work. These are upside down, so they're hard to get. Where our needle nose go?
So while you're working on that, JD, got a question in here, or maybe a comment. Yeah, question. Can you install a multi-zone outdoor and only use one zone? They'll be adding another zone at a later date. Unfortunately, Caleb, good question. In the past, there was a model, the C revision, that it was okay to do that on. However, the newer models that we have, the Gen 2, and especially the Multi-Ultra, you don't want to install a single indoor. You want to install a minimum of 2. So if you take a look at the documentation or the quick reference guide, you'll see that notated on there. And then Jay says, haven't had much exposure to the ceiling cassette. I keep getting asked if they have a built-in condensate pump or they have to pipe in an external one. Keep forgetting to look it up. Thank you. Good question, Jay. So yeah, it does have all the cassettes and slim ducts. Those 2 models are going to have a built-in condensate pump, right, JD?
Yep, we're getting ready to show you right now.
So we're going to look at it in just a second.
So just to get that extra flex in there, so this just lifts up. You want to kind of flip that back. Again, you don't want to manhandle it, just kind of wiggle it up. And then
What's it catching on?
should be coming up. All right, let's go back down.
Okay.
We're going to pull these wires actually out. All right.
And go back up with it?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
And then as you can see, this flips over, and that is your drain pan. There's a coating on there. That's why you want to be careful. You don't want to crack your drain pan. Put it somewhere where you're not going to step on it.
All right. So,
As you can see, here's your pump, here's your float.
and keep in mind, this is upside down.
Yes.
So this would actually give us an E9 error right now.
Yep.
Yep. So one thing that I have learned about this pump, JD, actually had an instance where we had a gentleman replace one, and like you said earlier, we don't have that many of them fail, so it's kind of odd. And well, he replaced it, and it still had the same issue, like it wasn't pumping water. So I got him to send me a picture of the pump, and the key there was I saw the data plate, which you won't be able to see it here the way we've got this in here, but it actually says 230 volts on there. And when I saw that 230 volts, it hit me for whatever reason to ask him to check L1, L2, or N1 and 3
Right.
on this. And come to find out, he only had 120 volts. Now the thing would run.
Oh, wow.
It would run in cool mode, but this wasn't working because this pump is 230, so it wouldn't pump. So this component itself, everything else would run, but that one 230 volt component wouldn't work. Just kind of like a reversing valve.
Right.
So, all right. So what else you got?
I think that's about it.
All right. So
And
as
you can see how easy, just four screws right here, that condenser fan motor would come out, and it's already free. So that's basically how you'd replace that motor too. If you had to replace the motor, 4 screws back in, and then
and you can also get to this coil if you needed to clean it, service it.
yeah.
But again, you would want to be careful with the styrofoam on the inside here,
Oh yeah.
not to damage it, because It's a lot of your insulation.
That's insulation for up in your attic, because otherwise you'll
Yeah.
condensate and have other issues.
Right, right. And also keep in mind, you know, if this is in an attic, you really, all that you have insulating anything here is this thin styrofoam. So you may want to put another case over it if it's in a hot attic area, just to add some additional insulation there.
And we did want to show the controller hookup.
Yeah, let's show them that, and hopefully, Nick, if you can zoom into the electrical panel here with camera.
We can tilt this
4,
maybe.
2 maybe. Go back. Right there.
And as you can see, it's just a 4-pin plug, and there's a empty 4-pin plug right here. It says manual.
And what does it say on it?
Manual.
Okay.
Snaps right in there.
All right. So now, this one. So this particular controller, this is a XE72, which is a Wi-Fi enabled controller, and it came with this cassette. So if you were to purchase a XE72, it would not come with this cable. It would come with a cable that has on this end.
You get it.
It would have a different plug than the other end, like this. And you'd have to have that pigtail that we were talking about earlier when we had that question on that. So,
It's in there good.
yeah, once you put it on there, you leave it.
Right.
You don't take it back off.
Here we go.
All right, perfect.
I had to remove that little retainer clip.
The
as well.
retainer clip. Of course, it's always the retainer clip. All right. This is what is this? A 9K high static slim duct?
Where's that? Yep. It's a Duct 09 HP 230V1BD. So, of course, again, this unit is upside down. So be sure to follow your minimum clearances, so that way, if you have to service the unit, you can get these covers off. If you install it too close, this is the only way to get to some of these components. So just be considerate of your minimum clearances. As you can see, this one has screws all the way around it. This is going to be the first cover you remove. So we're going to go ahead and do that.
Now this one, this is technically upside down right now too, right?
Correct.
Okay. So if this was mounted, it would, well, we've got an example back here that we'll use. It would be completely opposite. But you notice on this side here, you're going to have a built-in condensate pump, but you do not have to use that built-in condensate pump on the slim duct, just the slim duct model. So you've got 2 gravity drains, one on each side, so you could use the gravity drain and come out either side, or you can use the condensate pump pipe here that's next to the refrigerant line connections. And we'll show you when we get to the electrical panel how to do that and disconnect the pump. So.
Yep. So this would be the cover you take off if you need to service the blower wheel or the motor for any reason. Then there's 3 kind of hidden screws right up here that attaches this door to this segment. So hard to get a drill in there. So
Hey, you got to have the extensions.
that's true.
Zip, zip.
That would make life easier. Come on. Yep, there it is. All right. I take that back. There's 4 screws.
As with anything, once you get to the point where you're actually able to move the panel and it's not moving, there's no need to force it. You've probably missed a
Right.
screw somewhere.
Oh, yeah. All right, so then we're going to take off the other side panel to get this top panel removed.
This panel here?
Yep.
Okay, so this is where the supply is.
Yep. This is your supply, and this will expose to pump.
Okay.
I believe that stays on there. Let's see.
This one's there?
Maybe that does come off too. Yep, you're right. All right.
All right.
So then we got a couple screws on the side here. And we can service that
Right here, JD? These?
Yep.
Yeah.
That thing comes off, lifts up.
All right, so that is our drain pan.
Yep, there's your drain pan. That just lifts right out. Again, they have the coating on there. And now you can see the pump and the float.
Awesome. So we've got our coil and everything accessible to service and blower wheel, fan motor. I wonder if maybe we can get a little bit better picture right there. Yeah, so you can see the condensate pump right here. Then you've got your float switch there. And that exit for that pump is right there.
Yep.
So, and as you can see on the drain pan, you got 2 exits on each side if you are able to use gravity, or you can depend on the pump there. Now, let's say we're going to use gravity drain and not use the pump. What do I have to do, JD?
Don't we have to undo the motor?
We got to undo that condensate pump motor,
Yep.
right? So, we'll turn this back around here and get to the electrical cover. So we'll just take this panel off. All right, now there's our control board, our power connections.
So it's hard to see because of zip tie. Just cut it. Then we got our wires connecting right here. And it's going to say you got pump, room tube sensor, that's your sensor, that's your water right there. So of course you want to do your pump.
All right, so just give Nick a minute to zoom in on this. So there's going to be 2. One's going to be your switch, right?
Correct.
Float switch, and one's going to be your pump. So you want to make sure that you get the one that says pump. And then what's the other one say, JD? So, all right.
Yeah, so pump,
That's pump.
room tube, water.
And then the water, that says water DTCT. So that's going to be our switch. So we want to unplug the one that says pump. So we don't want it to power. Because we're not going to use that port if we're just using
The gravity.
drain. Right. So, all right.
No. Well,
So Bob is asking, got a question here. So if you have ductwork hooked up to it, will you need to remove the duct to access the pump?
We did it for convenience factor.
Yeah, I think you would be able to access the pump itself from, actually, JD, let's do this.
Because this would be your duct right here.
Yeah.
So you could still get to the pump.
You could leave that connected. And just removing that panel there from beneath, remember this is upside down. So you could remove that. And you may have to unscrew this enough to bend it back a little.
To get that top piece off.
To get that top piece off. And then you could do that. But look at this, JD. So if you take a look at this right here, you think we can just pull that whole thing out?
Yep.
So
I would say so.
there is a panel right here that we can take off and get to that pump from the side without having to take the entire assembly apart there. So we're going to go ahead and do that. What do you think?
Yep. Got it. And this.
And that was a good question.
There we go.
Yeah, kind of got the insulation around the
So this,
refrigerant pipes there.
I'll do these.
That's actually holding the pump itself in, isn't it?
Holding the pump. That way we'll be able to get it out of the hole.
Okay, gotcha. You undo those. All right. So I think that you would want to disconnect this pipe right here first.
Right.
So, because it would make it easier to get the pump out of there after you remove this. So, but it'll still come out just like that. So
Yep.
you can service the pump and the switch from right there. So, all right. And this one you're going to put back together late tonight too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
While you're eating dessert.
All right, cool. Well, I think that's pretty straightforward. I did find it interesting that it has this squirrel cage in here. You know, I used to think that there was just a crossflow,
Right.
a crossflow fan in the slim duct, and it's not. It's actually a squirrel cage ran by a motor that's next to it. So, pretty good stuff.
Yep.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video on the disassembly of the cassette and the ducted unit. So with that, we'll move right on into the questions.
Yeah, so Greg, we had a few answers on, your question that you asked about the time of day. Also, we wanted to just ask you what day would work better as well. So as we kind of wrap this up, even after we're done and we close things out, feel free to continue putting comments in there. Let us know what day and more info about what time would work best for you for the Tech 90 for us to do this show. And we had a couple answers, Greg. John said this time is good for him. And Chris said he's always a first thing kind of guy, or 5-ish. So
Well, I'm gonna probably just go out on a limb here and say we're probably not gonna do around 5-ish because there's certain guys out there like myself at 5-ish, you're probably already indulging in other cocktails rather than water. And I can imagine that we'd be getting some interesting questions at that point.
we'd get some really good questions though, wouldn't we?
So I think we're going to have to be, no later than 3 kind of thing in the afternoon if we do decide to do an often afternoon broadcast.
All
So,
right.
I'm not
So,
condemning it. I'm just saying that it's not doesn't work in a business attribute.
yeah, exactly. All right. So we've got a few comments in here from Carlos. The first one I'll address is the slim duct going to be ever going to be a horizontal or vertical installation? And I know there's some brands that do that at this time. GREE has no plans of making one that is vertical and you know, or both that we're aware of. Is that correct, Greg?
That's correct.
Okay. And then to the other comment, thank you, Carlos. I will send that comment up to our management and marketing and let them know that that's something that could be useful. Timothy, let's see. Timothy says not Monday or Friday, early or late. And then Andy just put in I like 8 a.m. start in Pacific time zone. Thanks. So that's kind of the reason why we chose 11 Eastern time is, you know, so that those guys on the Pacific time are, you know, able to jump on as well without it being 5 a.m., right?
Yeah, I think if it's 5 a.m. their time, they're not going to join us.
Right, exactly. So,
I know
well,
I
some
wouldn't.
people may. Sometimes I wake up early and, you know, I jump on the YouTube site and watch your training videos, Greg.
I'm
So,
sure you do.
yeah, with my coffee. So, another question that we had, Greg, and I think this is a good one here. If a unit's really dirty, what is your recommendation on how to clean it?
So it kind of depends on what unit we're talking about. It also has to do a lot about with how that particular indoor unit's installed, and it also depends on how dirty, right? So regular maintenance on a wall mount, I think that can be handled, you know, just with mild cleaning applications, you know, a mild, low acidic coil cleaner, and basically the same thing with the blower wheel. But if we're going to be dousing that with enough water or chemical, then you may need to use, and I always forget the name of them because again, we don't sell them, but they have those, you know, wash assemblies you can use for wall mounts. That's basically like almost like a bag
Yeah,
that
the
goes underneath
bucket
the
and
unit.
the like a speed kit or something like that, I think is
Yeah, and
one
then
of
you
them.
can use a pump sprayer and kind of get it all off. Um, Now, if you're talking, the thing's just absolutely filthy dirty. The blower wheel is completely plugged up with dirt. The evaporator is completely plugged up with dirt. You're going to spend more time trying to clean that in place inside the end user's space that you're going to have a hard time controlling where that dirt and mess goes. At that point, I would tell you that your best option is going to be to pump that thing down and disconnect it. So, and take the unit outside and clean it outside where you don't have to worry about that. Now,
Right.
keep in mind with the GREE mini splits, and we've talked about this before, I don't care if it's a multi-zone or if it's a single zone, you can pump them down. There is a function in the remote that allows you to do a pump down on them. You don't really need to do that. All you need to do is put them in cooling mode, close the small service valve, pump it back into the unit, close the large service valve. Now you're pumped down and you can disconnect that head. And you can do that on multi-zones too. And just keep in mind that when you get all done with that, the only head that you're going to actually have to pull a vacuum on is that one head you disconnected. You don't have to re-pull a vacuum on each circuit. So you just got to put a little thought process behind it and what you're doing and how you pump it down. And again, there's other videos that we've done talking about that whole pump down procedure. So I don't, and then when you're only, whether it's a single zone or pulling one head off of a multi-zone, your evacuation time just to evacuate that line set and coil is not going to be real long. So I really think, and I'm guilty of it myself, I think a lot of guys spend more time trying to do it without having to go through the extreme way of doing it when if they'd have just used the extreme way, meaning if you'd have just pumped it down to begin with, pulled the head off the wall, got it clean, put it back, did your evacuation, done. Now the thing's 100% clean, and you didn't have to worry about, well, can I get it clean enough? You know, you're tempting to do it and you're spending time doing all that, then it might have just been better time spent to just say, you know what? No, we're just going to pump this thing down, pull it off the wall, take it outside, clean it all up, put it back on, full vacuum, let the charge back out and turn it back on. So now when it comes to a cassette or a ducted unit, that may be a lot more involved, you know, as far as how that cassette's hung up in there. But a cassette's going to be really hard to clean in place. Even though if you take that whole drain pan and everything else, like we show in that disassembly video, trying to get in there and keep that coil, get the coil clean without making a huge mess is going to be really hard to do. So you may just have to, you know, talk with your end user there. And we say end user instead of homeowner because, you know, these units are used in commercial applications. They are used in residential applications. So, but you may be better off to just say, hey, look, the best way for us to do this, it is the most expensive way, but the best way for us to do this is to physically remove that head, take it outside, clean it, put it back in.
Really
Ducted
good
unit,
points, Greg.
ducted unit depends on that scenario. Where is it located? Do I have an emergency drain pan underneath it? Am I going to cause any damage if I get water where I shouldn't? You know, it's no, in my opinion, that's not much different than cleaning an air handler at that point.
Right.
Just a little tighter space. So anyway, anything
All
to
right,
add to
well,
that, Daniel?
No, I think you covered it well. And, you know, it always, I learned a long time ago when I go to address something, 9 times out of 10, I'm saving myself time if I just go ahead and go through the entire process of taking it all apart. If I try to skip the steps, it doesn't matter what it is, whether I'm working on a GREE unit or anything else, doing something around the house. You know, if I'm or I like to use the automotive reference. You know, if I'm needing to replace, let's say the coil in my dash, like the water coil or whatever, I'm gonna take the whole thing apart. Like I'm gonna break something if I don't go ahead and take the whole thing apart.
Right.
So I'm gonna save myself time by doing the entire disassembly and not trying to shortcut it. So that's a really great point, Greg.
Any other questions come in?
Looks like Don said earlier the better, and Wednesday works good. So thanks for
Excellent.
adding that in there. And that looks like all that we have for to wrap it up, Greg.
Well, we'll keep it open for just another 30 seconds, 60 seconds or so, and just give anybody a chance to get your last minute questions in. We're happy to answer them the best we can. I hope you guys got a lot out of that. I certainly did myself. Like I said, I didn't actually, tear it down. JD did in that video of taking that cassette apart, but it comes apart a lot easier than it looks, right?
Yeah,
but again,
it does.
We don't have it hanging through a drop ceiling either. So we can make it look real easy on a table, and it might not be so easy when you're 10 feet, 15 feet up in the air.
Right.
So depending on where it's used. So
or standing on your head upside down somewhere trying to get to it.
And I guess the other thing to make mention of is when it comes to cassettes, I'm seeing more and more people, more contractors utilizing cassettes in residential structures with drywall ceilings. And if you guys want to do that, that's fine. That's up to you. Just keep in mind that later date, the serviceability of those cassettes in a drywall ceiling is going to be tough because cassettes were really designed around drop ceilings, not drywall ceilings. So, and they've done better with, a little bit bigger, what do you call them? The grills, so that they're bigger than the whole opening, so that now you can get to the side a little bit. But if you have no access above that drywall ceiling to troubleshoot or work on that unit,
Yeah, you got a
and
problem.
can't get to the refrigerant lines and stuff like that, it's going to make it really tough to service that unit. So that's why I kind of feel like in a lot of those applications, that's where your floor ceiling mounts would be a better application, or a wall mount may be a better application, because now the unit is hung underneath the drywall on the ceiling, or it's on the floor ceiling or sitting right up off the floor, or a wall mount that's hanging on the wall. At least it's accessible to be able to service and repair the unit.
Right. Or go with the slim duct option to where you
That-
can put it in an accessible closet or whatever, and then just run the minimal amount of ductwork you need just to drop it into that space.
And that's something else to make mention of too, is these units, the ducted units, are not insulated to be in a unconditioned space.
Correct.
So if you're going
Same with
to,
the cassette.
yeah, if you're going to use a ducted unit in an attic, that thing's going to have to, the whole unit's going to have to be insulated. Otherwise it will sweat.
Right. And the same thing goes for that cassette. If you're putting it in a finished ceiling, not a drop ceiling, and you're putting it up into the attic, then you need to insulate around that piece as well.
Yep.
All right, Greg. Well, that looks like all of the questions.
Well, I want to thank everybody for participating in today's broadcast. If you had to step away for a bit, if you'd like to go back and revisit any of the training from today, it'll be posted on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and you go to greecomfort.com in YouTube, and you'll be able to find those videos. We'll also be able to find them on our website.
And don't forget to join us for our next Tech 90. It's going to be May 29th when we cover outdoor unit board replacement.
Also, our next Talking Comfort Live, as always, will air on the first Wednesday of the month. Be sure to register for any of our trainings at our training calendar page on greecomfort.com. And always remember, at GREE, we're by your side.